Let's get started. Thanks again for everybody joining us. This is the third of our series on radical and stress-free strategic planning because we've already had two webinars so far, and I really encourage if you missed those, you can go back and watch the recording. They were in the registration page for this one, but if anybody needs links to those, let us know. But you know, this strategic planning is so stressful, and everybody struggles with it, and teams like they feel like they're just, you know, okay, just commit to this and get on with it, and we don't have clear visibility how we fit. And so Radhika really joined us and is taking us through a real clear and step-by-step process for how to do this. And so in the first session, she shared with us, how do you do vision and prioritization, and what does that look like, and what is a good vision? And so she presented how to craft what she called a radical vision statement, which was really great. And then in the second session, she built on that and said, okay, now that we have a vision, how do you create a powerful product strategy? And she introduced us to the radical strategy, RDCL, which got into the real pain points, the design capabilities, and logistics. And the one that's still sitting there for us is today is, okay, well, how do you measure success? How do you know if you're doing this correctly? And you know, we all have lots of measurements that we've typically used for things, and Radhika is going to take us through today if those are the right ones or if there are better ones. So my name is Paul Heller. I'm your host for today. I work for Sophion. I'm the chief evangelist, and I work with a lot of companies helping them bring forward their innovation. I also have a weekly podcast called Innovation Talks, and that little QR code in the upper right will take you to it, and it's available on all the platforms. And I hope you'll listen in. And I'm always looking for guests to share with me on that. Radhika's been on it. Even some of the attendees here have been on it. Chris Meyer was on it. So you know, really looking forward to just talking to people about innovation. Today's webinar is brought to you by Sophion, and they make a number of products, but the two we'll mention today are Acclaim Ideas and Acclaim Products. And they are really focused on understanding, kind of discovering ideas and developing those through concepts. And then if you're a product manager and you've just got to keep track of the 1,001 things that you need to do to get your product and its continued versions and extensions down the future, to organize all that, to track your key product metrics, your key personas and all. That's what Acclaim Products will help you with. So encourage you to take a look at those. They're on the Sophion.com website. Okay, so about Radhika. She's an author, a speaker, a product leader, an entrepreneur. She wrote a great book called Radical Product Thinking, the New Mindset for Innovating Smarter. And I really encourage everybody to read that. In fact, it's even in multiple languages. So if your native language is in English, you might be able to find it in your native language. If your native language is Japanese, it's out there. So she advises organizations from high-tech startups to government agencies to all sorts of companies on how do you build radical products that create a fundamental change. And so we're really honored that she could join us again. She's been here for two webinars so far, and for this last one. And with that, Radhika, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul, for that introduction and such a great overview of the three webinars so far and what we're covering today. So for everyone who has joined, thank you for joining from around the world. And if you thought the previous two webinars were a bit radical in terms of what the concepts they were introducing, well, wait till you hear this one. I mean, this goes to becoming outright blasphemous or heretic, right? So today we're going to be talking about why we need to rethink OKRs, because the whole idea behind a strategic plan is that, you know, we want to provide good direction to our team for the year, right? And so towards that, we talked about, vision, and then how we translate that into strategy. And then finally, of course, we need to translate vision and strategy into execution and measurement. And today, the way we typically do that is through OKRs. And we're going to talk about how OKRs actually might be ruining your product and what we need to do instead. Now, while everything I'm saying right now sounds heretic, I am not actually the first person to say it, believe it or not. So in 1976, as early as the 70s, there was Campbell's Law, which you can look up on Wikipedia if you like, which says that the more a given metric is used to evaluate performance, the more it's likely to be gamed or corrupted, and therefore the less reliable it becomes as a measure of success. Now, we've seen Campbell's Law in reality and how that affects products or how that affects, even social stuff, right? Like, let's look at these examples and how this plays out. So when standardized test scores are used as a measure of success for schools or for teachers, you notice that teachers start to teach to the test, and that's not good for education. The metric itself becomes corrupted and is no longer then a good metric to measure success. We've seen this in law enforcement where, we start to look at arrest rates as a proxy for public safety. And so then you see things like coercive, how do you call it? Getting people to confess. Yeah, coercive confessions and high arrest rates without really getting better public safety, right? And then you see this in healthcare where you might see really good doctors who then don't want to take on tough cases because they don't want to tarnish their success rate. And so, which is in fact the opposite of what we need, right? We really do need a good doctor to take on a tough case because it's tough. So this is how Campbell's Law plays out, where when we focus too much on a metric to evaluate performance, that metric ends up becoming corrupted. And in fact, there is Goodhart's law, which predates even Campbell's law. So this was 1975, where Charles Goodhart is a British economist, and he said, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So there's all this precedent from the 70s. So then that just begs the question, okay, so if the adverse effects of targets and metrics, if we've known them for so long, for decades really, then why are OKRs so popular? Because OKRs really use targets and metrics to measure performance, right? So why then, right? Let's talk about OKRs for a moment before we examine this. What are OKRs? Objectives and key results. And the way OKRs work is that the idea is that it's going to improve performance by using these targets and metrics to define the narrative of the impact that you want to create so that you give everyone clarity on where are we going. But, if you've listened to the first webinar, you know that using the radical product thinking approach, instead of defining the narrative using goals and metrics, you can use it. You can use a radical vision statement to give everyone this clarity of where are we going, right? The second point about OKRs is to align teams on what metrics are important. Today, we'll talk about how to do that. And the third thing is creating accountability, asking this question of, are you or aren't you achieving goals? Kind of like an end of the year exam. And this third point is where we really need to ask, do we even want to do that? Can we be effective with metrics by even trying to create performance evaluations through metrics, basically?